Hi, I'm Tina Howard, and this is Community Conversations. I'm really happy to be back here this week, and I've got some great guests. It's Chuck and Carolina Cawthon. And boy, when you sit at a table with Chuck and Carolina, you sit up straight and tall. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
I saw you guys in the grocery store not that long ago, and I mean, y'all probably don't know me from Adam, but you always are nice enough to speak. And I immediately wanted to hide all the chips. Is that typical when people see?
Well, from me, they don't, but when they see her, when they see Carolina, they try to hide.
I get that every time I see someone in the grocery store. I see them inching around to get between me and their cart.
Yes, hiding
like,
the chips and the cookies. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not alone then.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Well, thank you for coming today. This is exciting. I am so glad that you came because there are a lot of things that we want to cover.
Okay.
And the first thing I think I want to ask you is, when you hear Chuck Cawthon, you immediately think about disciplined and strong and winning all these awards and competitions and things. And then when you hear Carolina Cawthon, you think accomplished and strong and kicking some booty and all kinds of things like that. So I want to start with, because you're so dynamic, you're like Hartwell's power couple. So I want to start I'll start with Chuck and just ask you, who was Chuck Cawthon as a kid?
Wow. Well, when I was a kid, that's a long story, but what led me to the road where I'm on now all started when I was a little bit before I could remember. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease as a young child. I was around 4 years old.
Wow.
And so I was in and out of hospitals, radiation, chemotherapy, operations, and things like that. And during that time, early on, I was adopted by my grandparents. And so I didn't live with my parents. My grandparents were retired. We had very little money. We lived in a low housing income projects. And so, you know, I never starved. I always had food, always had clothes, but I didn't have, you know, the clothes that everyone else had and things. So that was a little hard. But the first sport I ever was in was Taekwondo, taught by John Cleveland. He was the vice principal at the time at the high school, and then later on superintendent.
And where was this? What city?
Oh, it was in Hartwell. I grew up in Hartwell, yes ma'am.
Okay.
And I was 10 years old, around 10 years old, and up until I was 10, I was too sick to do any other sports. My grandparents were very protective. Mm-hmm. So once I had my first Taekwondo class with Mr. Cleveland, I was hooked. I could not.
And how old did you say you were when you were?
I was around 10 years old. Yes ma'am.
And at 10, you had known what it was like to be ill.
Yes, ma'am.
And at 10, how did you feel? Were you feeling well when you started? Were you on top?
I felt like I really, even when I was going through radiation chemotherapy, I felt like I wanted to go out and play and do it. And in recess and in PE, I did all the things the other kids did, but my grandparents put that little, you know, protective shield around me. But
sure.
When I started Taekwondo, I was actually in a wheelchair for about 6 months. They said I wouldn't be able to walk right again, like early on, between the ages of 5 and 10. Oh, wow. And they said I wouldn't be able to walk right, or I might have to use braces to walk. Mm-hmm. So about 3 months into Taekwondo, I broke my first board, like karate kick, you know, my board. So my grandpa took that board that I broke, and I had to go monthly for checkups. And he gave it to the doctor that said I wasn't going to be able to walk right again with my feet. Yeah, so he gave it to him.
Wow. Well, I guess your grandparents just hung on every thing that you did in Taekwondo that was proof that you were not only well, but you were strong and thriving.
Yeah, my grandpa went to every class. Of course, he had to take me, but he went to every class and he watched me get hit in the face for the first time, you know, and he laughed. It was a student, and her name was Becky.
Oh,
that they hit me in the face for the first time. My grandpa laughed about that for hours, I'm sure.
He was still laughing about it.
I bet. That's a good story. But now grandparents, I think about them in terms of the ages. Taekwondo didn't really come along until probably about the time you started in terms of in rural Georgia anyway, in the South maybe. And so your grandparents probably didn't grow up knowing what that was.
They did not. And one thing, going back to when I was younger, and I was in my hospital room a lot, and so the only thing I could do was watch TV. They wouldn't let me go out and do this periodically from pre-K all the way up through 3rd grade. And so one thing that I really loved to watch was Hong Kong Phooey, the cartoon Hong Kong Phooey. So
I remember that.
Yes, and so my grandpa, I would always ask him to go downstairs to the gift shop to get me the Hong Kong Book of Kung Fu, right? Like Hong Kong Phooey had, but of course they didn't have that. But he would always go and come back with coffee and say, they didn't have it. Yeah, so that was my early on like Kung Fu, and I think looking back and trying to look too deep into it, it was because I was so sick. I looked to superheroes and karate and martial arts to be in that, like superpowers, like I want to do that. And so then I got into comic books, superheroes, and then Saturday afternoon Kung Fu theater came on, and that was amazing to me.
Now, was that the old Japanese films with the subtitles?
The Chinese Kung Fu movies, yes ma'am, subtitles.
I remember those.
Yes ma'am, and I loved them, and so I watched them all the time. Then the Karate Kid in the early 80s came out.
Yes.
And it was over with. It was done. Like,
wow.
Yeah, I had to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's when Mr. Cleveland started teaching. Around that time, Mr. Cleveland started teaching at the local recreation department.
That is awesome. Now, those old Japanese Kung Fu movies with the subtitles are probably things that today draw a lot of their action from, because that was new, that you didn't really see.
Yes, it was. They did a lot of wire work. It looked like they were flying and doing all kinds of cool stuff. And American movies still have yet to capture the little nuances that the Chinese action movies have still today. They do. A lot of American movies, they do a lot of cutting and editing, and a lot of Chinese Kung Fu movies, they do one long take of a fight scene.
Oh no, that's totally different, isn't it? I never thought about that. But so the Chinese movies would string somebody up on a wire, for example, and film the whole fight probably, or at least
in
the
the
whole
air.
sequence.
They'd fight in the air. They'd fly from tree to tree, like in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. They would do it, yeah.
That's cool. So, and now we see a lot of the movies now that have that kind of a fantastic element to the action that is probably not real, but and I think they drew a lot from that.
They did. American movies have gotten a lot better with their action since then, but with CGI and with they do a lot of cutaways because of stunt actors, whereas the Kung Fu theater, Kung Fu movies, the actors were the stunt people. Like Jackie Chan, actor Sammo Hung, they were the stunt people doing the action, so they didn't have to do a cutaway and edit.
Right.
Because they were the people doing the Kung Fu were the stunt people.
One and the same. Interesting. Well, that's a great story about coming from being sick and becoming and overcoming that. Did you start at 10 and continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Taekwondo?
There was only for about 3 years Taekwondo. Then Mr. Cleveland took the superintendent job position, so he had to stop teaching. So when he stopped teaching, there was about maybe a whole summer, maybe a little longer, where I didn't have a karate instructor. And but my cousin trained in martial arts, and since it was over the summer, we hung out the whole time. We would practice every day religiously. We would go out and do kicks, and we'd kick trees and run, and we'd do everything. And then one of my best friends in high school, middle school and high school, introduced me to Chip Prather. Chip Prather from Toccoa, Georgia, who was his karate instructor.
Okay.
And so then I started with him, and eventually Mr. Prather started teaching. He would drive from Toccoa to Hartwell and teach at the same recreation center that Mr. Cleveland taught. So that's how I kept up with the martial arts.
Wow, fantastic. And you did that all the way through school then, high school included?
Yes, ma'am.
And then where were you graduation? What happened after graduation?
Graduation.
Were you top of the game, super cool guy that everybody at school was afraid of?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But I was more of a social chameleon. I grew up in, like I said, in a low housing income neighborhood, so I was friends with the different people there in the afternoon. But I was also in a lot of high level classes at school. So I was with the smart kids, and I was at school, and I was also coming home.
And you were with the rich kids and with the poor kids,
Yes,
and the smart kids and the not smart kids.
I don't know
You
that.
had a broad spectrum of friends.
Right, and I really don't, unless they never told me, I got along with everyone. You know,
Sure.
I didn't, I didn't.
Did that
not have
define you in high school?
I think what defined me was my hair and my clothes. And I was always trying to make people laugh, I think. Trying. Sometimes I was,
Was your hair long like now?
No, I had what I called a ghetto mullet. It was I had, it was shaved on the sides, it was short on top, curly, and long hair in the back, so.
Wow, that was distinctive.
Yeah.
Not exactly Rob Lowe with the...
It wasn't Rob Lowe, no.
That's great.
Yep.
Fantastic. And we'll circle back. Okay. I'm going to ask Carolina now a little bit about your growing up. Were you growing up in Hartwell as well?
So I moved to Hartwell with my parents when my dad retired.
Okay.
So I was one of those late in life second family kids. My dad was 55 when I was born. My mom was in her 30s.
Okay.
And so my dad retired when I was in junior high. So
and nobody else in junior high's dad's retiring.
Nobody in junior high had parents old enough to be their grandparents. And we moved. I grew up in elementary school in the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area, and moved from there to Hartwell, Georgia. And of course, I was that tweeny 12, 13-year-old.
Tough time to move.
It was really a rough time to move. I had a hard time settling in. But that's the way it was. So we moved here. My parents were older. They both smoked. My mother struggled with obesity. So my thing that happened to me, well, first of all, the thing that happened to me was I ended up dropping out of high school at the end of 10th grade, getting married, having 2 kids.
My first question is why? It just came out. Why?
Why? I think when
were you dissatisfied with school?
I loved school.
You did?
I did. I was a straight A student all the way. I think when I dropped out, I had straight A's in the classes that I had gone to enough to have good grades. But at that time, so I was pregnant is the first thing you need to know. And at that time, this was in the early 1980s, girls didn't stay in school when they got pregnant.
Well,
it wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing.
And so, my parents were heartbroken. My dad, I don't know if he told me once, he told me 1,000 times that I'd thrown my life away. But he got over a lot of that before he passed away. But I ended up getting married, which, I wouldn't recommend to anybody 16. To get married when you're 16.
That's tough.
But
you think you know.
You think you know everything. Right. You think you know everything. And to our credit, we did the best we could. 2 kids, get married, and we ended up having 2 kids. By the time I was 18, I had 2 kids and a mortgage, which is kind of a pretty weird thing, yeah.
You grew up quickly.
I grew up really fast, but in the meantime, my parents were older and they were starting to suffer the ill effects of their lifestyle choices. And so I really wanted to do better for my kids and my family.
Sure.
And so, like my kids, we didn't eat a lot of junk food. We tried to exercise a lot. I had taken up smoking as a teenager because I was a dumb teenager. Quit smoking, working out more, and of course...
And working out, now this was 80s, 70s.
This was in the 80s, so this is like step aerobics.
Yeah, that was going to ask.
This is step aerobics.
Jane Fonda.
Yeah, Jane Fonda step aerobics. And it was a lot of fun, and I felt like I was doing so much better than my parents had done taking care of myself. So what I had
there was your cautionary tale, right?
There was I got to see it unfold before my eyes.
Especially because they were older and some of those effects had caught up.
Some of those effects that I would have been older before I had ever seen, I was really seeing as a young adult. And
what
so
an impression.
it was a hard thing to go through. I was my mother's only child, my dad's youngest child. His other children were grown and lived far away. So I kind of bore the brunt of being the kid taking care of these older parents.
At such a young age.
At such a young age. And I thought, well, I've got to do better for my own kids and I've got to do better for them. And so fitness and health was kind of where I was coming from. And when my son started taking karate classes from Chuck's instructor, I thought, oh, this looks like way more fun than step aerobics.
And how old was your son when he entered into that?
So he was 10.
So he was 10, and you were already fit because you'd been doing
I was pretty fit. I'd been doing step aerobics and doing some walking and running.
And you're the good mom
that
drives your son to
and so actually his dad put him in karate.
Okay.
And he went to karate for a few months before I ever saw a karate
sure.
class or
Okay.
anything.
Okay. But you had watched the Karate Kid, so you kind of knew.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of knew what they were getting into.
Yeah.
But it was so different. And so at first I was interested. I wanted to learn karate and earn belts and do all that and compete. And then somewhere along the way, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is such a fitness component to this, and why aren't we doing this? And so I promise this is a true story. Anyone who's my age will remember when Billy Blanks hit the scene with Tybo, and it really was about that whole same time that I was thinking there's got to be a way to take this and make it something people can do for fitness without having to learn forms and earn belts and worry about getting hit in the face if that's not what they want to do.
I worry about that.
Yeah.
I think about that.
And a lot of people do. And I think, maybe the whole country was exploding at the same time. We had seen that fitness was something we needed to be concerned about, that sedentary lifestyle was probably going to be our ruin. And we started wanting to find more fun ways to stay in shape.
Sure.
So me and Billy Blanks and a few others all at the same time kind of exploded out of the woodwork with some version or another of fitness.
So you had your
kickboxing.
own fitness program that you promoted. What a gutsy thing to do for a young mom who has dropped out of school, who sees this is the future and this is what I want to do. That's gutsy.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Now, I have to say, though, in the middle of all of that, I ended up going to work for Gibbs Manufacturing Company, which is the Hardegree family.
Right.
And lucky for me, Scott Hardegree's son Morris is the same age as me, and we were in school together.
Okay.
And I think it was 8th grade algebra, pre-algebra we had together that I distinctly remember. But so when I went to work for his dad, working in the plant, working for production, he came home. He was in college by then. I was not in college.
Right. You're a mom.
I was
working
a mom,
yeah.
working mom. And he comes home and he says, I went to school with her. She's like the smartest person in our class. So as things kind of opened up to move me into an office administrative role, so I had all that going on in the background too.
Wow.
So by the time my son was in karate, I had actually kind of had a chance to kind of grow a little bit and spread my wings. I had learned that I really could learn things and do things. I was really lucky. The Hardegrees had a lot of confidence in what I could do. And as I learned and showed that I could handle the responsibility, they let me run with it.
Wow.
So that was kind of, first step in, okay, I'm not a dumb kid who made all these mistakes.
Yes.
I'm not. And so that was kind of the first little bit, yeah, you can do this. You're not a dummy. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes all it takes is one little mention of something like Morris saying, I went to school with her, she's so smart, and then Scott and Tom paying attention and giving you a few breaks.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
It really
So
helped.
then did you start doing martial arts?
I did. So my son he'd been in for probably a year when I started. So he was a little bit ahead of me.
Do you remember one of the first times you went to maybe pick him up and see some of the classes or what he was doing?
So the first thing I went to was a demonstration that Chuck's instructor did in Toccoa.
Okay.
At the Stevens County
Football field,
yeah. And that was the first time that I had been to a karate event of any kind. This was, so for me, this was like, oh, this is just this thing he's doing. There was Cub Scouts and those kinds of things. And, so he's going to do karate for a while. And I saw this demo and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is the greatest thing in the world. Yeah. And Chip Prather, who was Chuck's instructor and my son's instructor at the time, Chuck was working for Chip then. But just loved them all, loved the attitude, the positive attitude, the respect, and the just the order that kind of everything was.
Yes.
It was so appealing to see all these kids that it should have been chaos, and everything was orderly.
Right.
It was, it made such an impression.
Because life is chaos.
Yes,
right?
life with kids is double chaos.
It is double chaos. So to be able to kind of see such organization, I can see where that would appeal to you.
It was amazing.
But where do you go from that's cool to I'm going to do that?
So it was a few months after that, my son competed in his first karate tournament, which was a giant tournament in Columbia, South Carolina. As a parent, I was too new to martial arts to really realize that at the time it was one of the biggest tournaments in the Southeast.
Yeah, the Dixieland
deal.
Nationals. So it was really big. It was one of the most popular tournaments here in the Southeast.
Wow. And you said, I'm just going to go watch this little
I'm just going to go watch this little thing. Yeah. And you get so caught up in the excitement.
Yeah.
And my son ended up getting second place.
He ended up getting second. It was his first tournament. He'd never competed before. He wasn't a very coordinated kid.
Wow, but second when you've never done it before, that's big.
It was really amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. And you were not instructing him, Chuck.
I was. He was taking karate from my instructor.
Okay.
So my instructor was leading the classes, and then I was Mr. Prather's assistant instructor.
Okay.
So I would co-teach. So
Yeah.
I was the person who helped the students prepare for tournaments.
Okay.
So being young and being, I was like this uncoordinated kid, Dave, who I love to death, because he's been training for a long time. He's just not going to do well at this tournament. I was like just so concerned. And I was like, you know what? I've got to spend extra time with him because I don't want him to make the school and Mr. Prather's karate class look bad. So,
right.
So I was like, okay, I got to work with this kid. So I just started working with him. And he had huge improvements. The tournament started, and I had, and I've told Dave this since. I was like, Dave, I really didn't think you were going to do as well as you did. But he was one of those students that could not. He was so clumsy. He would trip. He would.
That's all 12-year-old kids, right?
Awkward, and I thought, man, we're going to a karate tournament, and it's the Dixieland Nationals, and he ended up winning, I think 2-3 matches, like just back to back.
Wow.
And then he lost to a kid that was about a foot taller than him. We called him Kidzilla. Because he was like just towered over Dave. And but he put up a good fight and he barely lost. And I was like, wow, this kid's going to be good.
Wow. So he really pulled it together for this event. Were you surprised when you saw
I was, because he was my clumsy, and it was fine. but I was so surprised and just that much more impressed. So I had seen all of this discipline at this demonstration that I had seen a few months earlier. And then I go to this tournament, and this is a kid I know is clumsy and and not a natural athlete, let me say.
Dave.
Sorry, Dave. I think that was the moment that I realized if they can make an athlete out of this kid, maybe I can be an athlete.
Because you already were disciplined and you had, because you're grown up.
But I had never really done anything athletic or competitive, and I thought it would be fun.
Billy Blanks and Jane Fonda notwithstanding.
Yeah. And so that was it's like, okay, I'm going to do this.
So you said, I'm signing up for
I am signing up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, did you have programs for adults at that point, or was Carolina one of the first?
Mr. Prather had 2 classes. He had one for kids, it was an hour long, and then one right after that for adults.
Okay.
So Dave was good enough and old enough at the time to where he would do the kids class and then stay for the adult class as well.
Oh, wow.
And so she would come for the adult class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was your first thought? Did you go home thinking, I got this, or did you go home thinking, I'm going to be sore tomorrow?
So the physicalities of it I was prepared pretty well by being in halfway decent shape when I started. What I wasn't prepared for, so as you learn, there are patterns of karate moves. Some traditional styles call them katas, less traditional styles call them forms.
It's like a dance routine.
But it's like a dance routine,
Okay.
but you do it alone.
Okay.
And you have to stand up in front of people and do it. And so I wasn't really prepared for that. Super nervous about it, and then sparring was a whole, because you're trying to hit someone and they're trying to hit you back.
And I must say here, as a female, that does not come naturally.
No, because if you do hit someone, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Right, right. You go all girly on.
Yeah,
I didn't mean
to hit you. Yeah, so you have to overcome some of that, and it really comes down to coaching and instruction. And with the right coaches, you have people that you learn to trust. You realize they're not trying to kill you. And you realize they're people that if you hit them, they know you're going to hit them. And it's expected, and you don't have to stop and apologize every time you make contact.
Right.
So, and you slowly come along. But I was a hesitant fighter. From the time I started karate in late 1994, early 1995, somewhere around in there, until after I'd earned my black belt in 2005, and then decided, okay, I'm going to get in the ring and really do this full contact.
Karate fighting is light contact, more speed based, And then full contact is what you think about boxing, where they're trying to knock each other out. So you imagine boxing with kicks, where they're trying to knock each other out, trying to hit you as hard as they can. And this is a person who's never been in a fight in her life, a physical fight.
Wait, you're doing the full contact
Yeah,
fight?
so she went from black belt to full contact fighting, and she told me she wanted to do it. I was like, no, we're not, no. And I tried to talk her out of it, but she kept insisting. I'm like, all right, we got to find the right opponent. I don't want you hurt, because I knew that she was good at sparring and fighting, but getting hit hard, is first time you get hit hard and you get your bell rung, it's kind of fight or flight. You either have what it takes to bite down on your mouthpiece and go forward, or you're not. And what I wasn't taking into account at the time was she might not have had been in a fight where she had to bite down on her mouthpiece and keep going, or she was going to get hurt, but she had been biting down on her metaphorical mouthpiece her whole life and going forward and then pushing forward. So she had that grit, that mental grit, that toughness that some of the best fighters and athletes don't have. I've seen some of the best athletes wince and stop and then give up when they could have pushed forward. She had that mental strength, so that's what helped her propel.
That is the nicest thing a husband could say.
Well, it's nice until we start arguing, because she's got that mental strength.
I bring that same
going forward.
But you must have known you had that, because that's an interesting way to put that metaphorically you'd been biting down, pushing through a lot of the challenges.
Well, so it's funny because I don't think I knew I had it. I think I had spent most of my life, so starting out as a teenager with my dad telling me, I'd thrown my whole life away because I was going to get married and have a baby when I was 16.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of undermines your belief in yourself. And, you start to internalize it and you start to live like, I'm okay, but you don't really, you lose sight of that inner fighter.
So how did you know you could compete if you really didn't?
I didn't. I just wanted, so somewhere along the way, I decided that the way I had to grow as a person was to take little steps outside of my comfort zone regularly.
That'll preach.
Yes. And I felt like when I looked at the world around me, stepping into the full contact ring, that was the next step I needed to take. That was the thing. I felt like I was lacking as a martial artist because I had not been in a full contact fight. I'd never been in a street fight or a bar fight or anything, where I was really in danger.
Yeah.
And I knew I would be outside my comfort zone.
So take us back to the day that you go and do this. Are you there also?
Yes,
Okay.
I was there. I was way more nervous than her. She'd fought at karate tournaments and she had won first place. I've actually seen her knock a woman out in North Carolina at a karate tournament, just fall back, and scared her to death more than it did the coach. Carolina hit her, the woman fell back, and Carolina's all scared. So I'd seen her spar before and fight, but I was really nervous for full contact because the purpose of karate wasn't to knock someone out, even though she did. It was to show good control and good technique, but the purpose of kickboxing is to try to win by knockout first, and then hit the person more than they hit you second.
Okay. So the morning of, you wake up, you're good to go. Are you having nerves? Are you feeling good?
I was so nervous. I was so very, very nervous. And you have those moments where you're like, why did I decide to do this? What was I thinking? Why did I think that getting punched in the face by someone who really wants to hurt me is going to be it's going to be a good idea.
Yeah.
But of course, you just have to dig in and get through it.
That's
and I thought, well, okay, it's 3 2-minute rounds. And I'm probably not going to die. So, so let's go. So we go and get dressed.
Probably
get my hands taped. Get my hands taped. And we get in the ring, and I don't remember really anything. I think I fought like on instinct and for my life for the whole 2 minutes.
So when you say you don't remember, do you remember the first? Did your opponent land something that you remember, or you just don't even feel that?
I don't remember what I landed. I don't remember what she landed. I can tell you that we're still friends on Facebook to this very day.
That's good.
Yes.
Did you win?
I did win.
You did?
I did win, yes.
You were surprised. Please tell me you didn't say.
I was not surprised. She fought 6 times. She fought 5 more times after that. She was undefeated.
Wow.
So she's 6-0 as a kickboxer. There was only one opponent that I was really nervous about, and that was her second fight. We kept hearing stories about this woman knocking grown men out, in training, and this was going to be Carolina's next fight. And I said no. I told the promoter, no, not this one. I'm going to find someone else. And she talked me into it. She goes, well, if I'm going to do this, and this person's my weight and same record, then we should take it. And I was like, and I think I said no for a whole day until she broke me down and said, let's do this. And so that was the second opponent. And during that fight, Carolina got hit hard with a right hand and didn't flinch and just kept going.
Wow.
And then my cornerman, Jim Robinson, was sitting next to me, and I saw the hit. And it hit Carolina on the head, and I grabbed Jim and I said it like this, and nothing happened. I thought, oh, okay, we got this. And so the rest of the fight, I think Carolina knocked her down maybe 4 times.
Wow.
During that match.
So. Now, we skipped over a little bit of time here. Obviously, you met at the studio when, okay, so take us back to, you were assistant teaching at that point under Mr. Prather, and then take me through, how did you get from assistant teaching under Mr. Prather and Carolina as a student to owning the studio, and you're married?
Well, so we were teaching, Mr. Prather taught in Stevens County, taught in Carnesville, taught in Hartwell. So during that time I'm teaching, and Carolina and her husband, she can tell you a little bit about that. It's kind of like most marriages, when someone gets married at age 16, it doesn't work out. Right. And since we had already made a connection in martial arts, already knew each other, we just started talking, and then started seeing each other, and
that just
gradually grew.
That's fantastic. What'd your kids say when you started dating the instructor?
Well, I think they were okay with it. The thing that really stands out in my mind is after Chuck and I had gotten married, we'd been married about 1.5 years, and my son, Dave, the clumsy one, he says to me, if you and Chuck get divorced, can I live with Chuck?
That is so nice.
So,
I love that, because you had a great relationship.
I did. I never tried to be, you get the stepdad and everything. So I didn't do any discipline. That was entirely up to Carolina. She was the mother. I gave advice, but I wasn't the disciplinarian. I didn't want to step on their father's toes or anything. So I didn't try to step into a dad role or even a stepdad role at that point. But Dave and I had built a rapport through martial arts and karate, because he had started at age 10, and he still trained with us. So Dave ended up being my first black belt. So my stepson was my first black belt that I ever had.
Cool.
Yeah, and he actually turned out to be one of the best fighters I ever had too. When he was 14, he won the men's middleweight kickboxing tournament when he was 14.
Wait, so he's competing against
men,
25-year-olds?
Yes, actually a 25-year-old and then a 29-year-old.
Oh my goodness, at 14.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. And at 14, he'd only been doing it for 4 years. That's incredible. That's great. And your daughter, does she also practice martial arts?
She started probably a
with
year.
You, right?
Yeah, she started when I did. So my son was about 1 year ahead of us.
That's a really nice benefit, that you got to know the family in that way before you were a part of the family as the husband and stepdad.
And Tanya ended up being, my stepdaughter, she ended up being technically my second world champion. She, our first world champion is Kayla Thornton. She won the world title a couple of hours before Tanya, my stepdaughter, won it. So my first 2 world champions in karate were female.
I'm just going to let that sink in for a second. You don't say world champion loosely. That means world.
Yes. The year they won, there were over 25 countries competing in a week-long karate tournament in Savannah, Georgia? Mm-hmm. In Savannah, Georgia. And it took, every day there was different divisions and everything. There were, like I said, over 25 countries. And most of them, of course, schools there were from the United States, but they were from all over Europe. They were South America. They flew all into the United States to compete at this tournament.
That's heady stuff.
Yes.
I mean, you come home after that and you've got 2 world champions and you've placed 15th in the world. And you get up the next day and you must be feeling pretty good about life.
Nervous, because at that point it's like, okay, now I got to get 3 world champions. So now we got to up the ante. I don't think Carolina and I have ever been happy and rested on our laurels, and we've never been content. We're good. Let's just relax here. We're always like, okay, what can we do to be better? What can we do?
See, that's the difference, I think, in a true competitor is somebody who doesn't let that stuff go to their head, but instead they think, okay, now what am I going to do? How am I going to build on that? That is great. But I hope sometimes you do, because
it's times like this when it's like we have to actually verbally talk about it. That we actually go.
And the day of something, you take the evening and you say, yeah, it was a good day.
Yeah.
But the next day was like
right back to work at the next day.
Yeah, then it's like, oh, that was so yesterday.
That's fantastic. Do you ever get tired of what you do?
No, I remember in Mrs. Green's art class in high school, we had to draw this landscape, and this was in high school. It was a street scene, and you had to draw buildings and perspective, and I drew a karate school, and I was like, okay. And then I had to come up with the name of the karate school, so I was doing modern martial arts or Shokushin karate at the time, and I was like modern day karate, modern contemporary karate. Then I wrote contemporary martial arts on the back of it. I thought, I like that. And I flipped it over, and I drew a yin and yang on the door. There's two glass doors, and I drew contemporary martial arts around it. I thought, okay, cool. Well, when we opened our business, it was this symbol that I drew on the doors. When we opened our first business, which is where right across, it's where CVS is now. So we opened that building. It was 2 glass doors. We got the stickers specially made, so it was just like the drawing I did like 5 years earlier.
Gosh, that's crazy.
So I've never known. I've always thought, what job can I do during the day so I can teach karate at night? Right. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we could do this full time.
Wow, and you have. And how many years since you started?
We opened in '96.
You opened so you married in about 95,
and
opened in 96, and that's been a while. That's quite a track record. And you've grown and expanded too.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we started in a small area, and now I know you've taken.
We did. We actually started in a room about as big as this studio,
okay.
and then we moved from there to the building where CVS is now. That it got torn down, and then we bought. Used to be the old skating rink on Ridge Road, so we bought that, renovated it, and been there 10 years plus, 15 years.
Wow. Since 2004.
Yeah, so it's...
Yeah, that's great how that has changed. So give us a little bit of information about what you offer. I know that we had a conversation right before we started that the classes are full, and you've added classes.
Right.
But in case anybody watching has a child or grandchild that might be, or they themselves might be interested in doing something, what do you think they should do? Go to the website or give you a call?
Well, let's start with fitness classes. You want to explain the fitness classes?
Yeah. So we offer a fitness kickboxing program that's for really anyone 14, 15 and up can come to that class.
Okay.
It's no contact, so you're not going to get punched in the face, but you do get the opportunity to hit bags. You wear gloves. You learn all the same kicks and punches that we learn in our regular classes. Get a really good workout in the process, and those classes are offered evenings and mornings for anyone that wants to come. I think they're a lot of fun. It's evolved since we first started doing those classes in 1998, but it's still a lot of fun, and I've got people who've been coming off and on since 1998.
Do you teach them?
I teach some of them.
Okay.
I teach Tuesday, Thursday nights, and Saturday mornings. Chuck teaches a Monday night class. And Rebecca Hart teaches Tuesday and Thursday mornings.
Rebecca is one of our black belts. She's one of our success stories too. She's a accomplished kickboxer herself, but she had lost 50 to 80 pounds in our kickboxing program.
Wow.
Trained and got her black belt. So she teaches the Tuesday, Thursday mornings.
Wow. Well, it must be really a cool feeling to see people come in and watch them transform their bodies and their minds.
Yes, yeah. We've got one student now. He's a drama teacher here at the high school. He's lost pushing over 50 pounds, and now we're closing into 100 pounds, and he's losing inches on his waist.
He's competed at karate.
He's Seth Howard. He's competing again soon, but his last tournament he won first place at the Battle of Atlanta. The largest tournament here in the Southeast. And
I know Seth Howard, and I saw a picture of him on Facebook on your page, and he looked amazing.
Yes, and he's continuing to. He was training hard last night. He trains 2 to 3 times a week. He trains at home. He's always sending me text messages about things. And so
you don't have to start as a kid.
No, man. We've got some of our best black belts actually started as an adult. We have over 20 black belts, and we're split half and half female, half are male. But a lot of those black belts started as adults. I think about half of them started as a junior and worked their way up, but the other half started, like Carolina, as an adult.
Wow. So see, it's not just for the kids, right?
No, it is not.
But I know for children, there are a lot of benefits, and I don't want to forget to go back to the other classes and things like that, because I don't want people to think that you're just one big fight studio or one big martial arts studio. You have you have a lot of different programs that you offer. But back to
the kids. So our kids program, we start them at age 3. So we have a 3, 4,
That's younger than I thought.
We have a 3, 4, and 5-year-old pre-K class.
Okay.
And with
what does this do for a 3, 4, or 5-year-old?
Well, with the 3-year-old, 3, 4, and 5-year-old, we really focus on the big picture: teamwork, manners, coordination, learning rights from lefts, and following directions. Once you give a 3-year-old, 4 or 5-year-old more than 2 directions to follow, you've lost them. So you've got to know how to deal with the cognitive abilities of the 3, 4, and 5-year-old. So we have a great instructor. Her name is Margaret Sanders. She's been to school specifically trained in classes to teach martial arts to ages 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we have a great little Dragons instructor with her.
That's great.
But that class is 30 minutes long, and twice a week. We really focus on balance, coordination. We do everything. We call it edutainment. So they're learning while they're having fun. So if you think about all the other animals in the animal kingdom besides us, the lion cubs and things like that, they learn by playing. So kids learn by playing. So what they do is they play karate games, and a lot of parents, it's almost a hard sell, because they're like, well, I don't want a kid to play. It's like, well, how do you want a 3-year-old to learn martial arts? How do you want a 4-year-old to learn martial arts?
Right.
So I have to kind of reel them in, and after they watch the first couple of classes, they're okay, I get it now, I understand.
And then I'm sure when they see the kids coordinate together in an organized group, that's got to be pretty impressive for the parents.
And sometimes, it's harder when they're 4 and 5 and they just start with us, or even when they're 3 and they've never done anything besides play with mom and dad at home and no structure. Sometimes it takes more than a month or 2 months for them to dial it in for that structure. And sometimes kids come in there and they're ready to go right off the bat.
Do you see changes in the kids throughout the program?
Yes. I get letters, I get messages, I get thank yous in the stores, wherever I go. Parents, even parents where their children have to drop out, they're, thank you so much. I saw a huge difference in my child, home, school, wherever, manners, while they were with you, and currently while they're with me. And we've got a good retention rate too, and because of that, because any coach can teach the physical activity of that sport. But in martial arts, we expect and we demand discipline and morals and ethics before the physical technique. Whereas a lot of coaches, they want to see the physical technique, and they really don't care if you're a bully or if you're rude to mom and dad at home or anything. We're the exact opposite. So we instill the discipline first, and then the physical activity second.
You bring up an interesting point, and I think a lot of people who don't know much about martial arts may have a misconception, especially because there's fighting and sparring and discipline involved. People may think that it's something that develops a very aggressive character, but in fact it's the inverse.
It is, and now that we've been in business for 22 years, we have the track record to prove it. We've had a lot of parents say, well, my kid's already mean enough, I don't want to start them. And it's like, well, that's the opposite. That's why you would want them in there. That would be like saying, well, my kid's not smart, so I'm not going to go and send him to school. The point of school is to get them smarter.
Educate,
And so we've had parents do that, and I think you can look at our track record since 1996. We've opened there. Any student, male, female, any age, they've never been a bully. They've never been picked on kids at school. They've never started fights. So I've had some kids that had to use martial arts to defend themselves, but the teachers and the video and the parents all were like, they did not start it. This is not them. So we do have that record to back up
So you think it maybe helps direct someone's feelings, maybe? They can channel their feelings a little better after they are disciplined?
One reason why bullies, children especially, act out and try to fight is because of their insecurities.
Exactly.
And so when you can give them confidence within themselves, there's really no need to prove that you're better than someone. You have the confidence to know, hey, I don't need to fight. I'm not going to do this. So the bullies themselves in elementary, middle, and high school, because of those insecurities, that's why they act out. So if you get them at a young age to try to prevent those insecurities, and one way we do that with martial arts is they get tangible evidence of improvement. They get a karate belt. So, and I say they earn it. We've had a lot of students and kids have to retest because they didn't pass their belt test. My granddaughter being one of them. She, not the one we brought to the studio today, but when she was 4 years old, she took her first karate test, and she told me no in the middle of the test, and all the other kids were around. And I said, Lily, I'm going to ask you one more time to do this. She said no. I said, okay, we're done. So I picked her up and she was crying. I'll do it, Paul. I was like, we're too late now. And we took them out, and I took her out in the hallway and gave her to her secretary, and all the other parents were just like, wow, he took his own granddaughter out.
Yeah.
And so just that level, knowing that I expect the same from my family as I do someone else's child, that kind of leaves a mark on it. But getting back to it, giving them so they can see, hey, I am getting better. Hey, I can do this. That gives them confidence to where they don't have to act out later on in life and be that bully.
I can see how important it would be to have middle school and high school kids, especially in the program. Because the middle school and high school is a tough time for kids.
Middle school is that transitional time period, and it's actually one of the toughest ages to get them to commit to, unless if they grew up in my program, they're with me. But getting them to start at middle school is kind of tough.
Why? There's so much else for them to do?
Yes, and because that's when they're old enough to refuse to go somewhere if mom and dad say we're going to go, like to karate, but yet they're still young enough to not know they need it.
Yeah.
So it is that tough little age.
It's an age when a lot of kids want to reinvent themselves a little bit too. And so the thing that they've been doing since they were in kindergarten or first grade, it's like, oh no, I can't do that anymore. Sure. That's so elementary school.
Yeah. Cool now. I'm going to do something else. Yeah. I can understand that, but they certainly need it.
They do. That's why we talked about our new programs we started at Contemporary Martial Arts. We used to have middle school and early high school in the same classes with elementary students years and years ago, but now we have a teenage class just for teenagers. So they don't have that looking over and seeing a third grader next to them in class. So we have teenage class twice a week, and it's combined with our junior black belts as well. So teenagers and junior black belts.
Okay. So it's a little cooler, though, because you're in with your age group and not with the little kids, right? Yeah. That's good. And then through high school, I imagine it's even more difficult because there's driving and there's dating and there's social.
The great thing, so we've had a lot of our kids that did come up through our ranks and started in kindergarten, first or second grade. By the time they're in high school, they're able to help us teach classes. And so they're able to take on that leadership role.
Right.
And they really like it. It gives them an opportunity to make a little bit of extra money. They can do private lessons with younger students to help them catch up for belt tests.
That's fantastic.
And it's so if we can hang on to them till they're high school age, lots of times they'll be there as much as they can.
Yeah.
That is great. So other than the fitness classes of kickboxing and the martial arts for the different ages, tell me what other types of classes.
We offer free training in all of our classes for law enforcement and military.
Wow, and that's cool.
Yes, and unfortunately, very few officers take us up on that. And
because they don't know, they don't have time, maybe?
I don't know.
I'm sure time is an issue. Yeah. I feel like most of the officers I know, they work a lot of crazy hours. And many of them also work a second job to supplement their income. So I know time is an issue for a lot.
But the training for law enforcement officers is one thing that and military, we felt we needed to do just to offer for them. But we have self-defense classes running all year round.
Okay, I saw one of those and I thought, boy, I would like to do that.
Here's what I think about self-defense courses. Like if you go to a 4-hour course or a 6-hour course or whatnot, and you drop hundreds of dollars. Well, are you going to keep training that consistently.
Yeah, no, because I took one and I don't remember much at all.
You wasted that $200 to $400.
Yeah.
So I try not to do self-defense seminars unless they're free. And what I try to do is give people tips on how to live and avoid rather than a physical technique. Because the physical technique is learned through repetition.
You're not going to learn that in 4 hours.
And if you do, you're going to forget it in 4 days.
Exactly.
So I hate to say I try to sell our program, because I tell people all the time, if you don't start training with me, there are other martial arts schools in the area. So go find one and train consistently. It doesn't have to be us.
But you do still offer the free...
We offer free training for law enforcement and military.
Training for law enforcement and military.
Yes, ma'am. But we have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a great way for adults who've got children or children. We have a junior Jiu-Jitsu program too. But it's the thinking man sport. You're not getting hit in the head. You're not punching and kicking each other. So it's like wrestling, but it's way more. Collegiate wrestling is like checkers. It's very complicated.
Okay.
A lot of it, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is like chess. So, it's like they're very similar, but there's way more things that you can think about and set up in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So it's really the thinking man's martial art.
So if I'm in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm thinking, if I move my hand here, he's going to move his hand there.
Exactly.
She's going to move her leg there, and I'm thinking through
exactly.
like that.
Like last night, I weigh, I hate to say what I weigh now, but I'm pushing 170, which is crazy for me. But I was grappling a guy last night. He was 256 pounds, and I was flipping him. I was getting on top. I was doing submissions, and he couldn't do anything. So strength does matter to a certain point. So I don't want women and people to think, oh, it's all leverage and no strength. No, you do have to be strong. But if you combine strength with leverage and technique, then you're going to be twice as prepared for an altercation. And for women, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is going to be the sport for self-defense and personal protection, because if a woman has to defend herself, more likely than not, it's going to be close quarters. It's going to be someone she knows, and it's either going to be grabbing or it's going to be on the ground. And that's where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes in. And that program is all year round. You can't train for a certain amount of time and be set for life. Okay.
So you could come in and do that. It would be a way to become fit.
Yes.
It's a way to increase your socializing with people. It's in a healthy way. And also may prepare you for something that you may face.
Right.
It would be a good way. So that's the number one thing you think for women that might be looking in terms of self-defense would be that class.
Yes. Yeah. Instead of punching, because even as great as kickboxers Carolina is, there's no way she's going to punch a grown man that's the average size and stop him from hurting her. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is kind of like the equalizer.
Okay. I would love to see one of those. Do you give those demonstrations at the...
Yeah, you can come every Tuesday night, 7:30. We have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Every Wednesday night, we have Judo, which is similar to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, taught by Zach Hill. And then we have Jiu-Jitsu afterwards. And every Saturday morning at 9 a.m., we have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay. That's great. That's a lot of different classes.
Yes, ma'am. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We got karate classes, we have kickboxing classes, we have junior jiu-jitsu, we have after-school program that we do, after-school karate program, we have free transportation, the city bus from junior high and Hartwell Elementary drop off in our parking lot.
Oh, that's
so we
nice.
have, so that's good for parents who go to Hartwell Elementary, and good for parents that have students in junior high, so they can come to our after-school karate program.
That's perfect. That's a great thing to do. So you heard that here. Okay, what I want to talk about now is the future. Where are you going from here? Because you have a lot on your plate, but you're managing it beautifully, and you've gotten a number of accolades and awards over the years that have to be really gratifying when you stop long enough to think about them.
Right.
And so for the next foreseeable, I know Carolina's heading back to school.
I am. So I'm halfway-ish through a PhD program in nutrition at the University of Georgia.
Think about that for a second. Someone who dropped out of high school is now in a PhD program.
Dropped out at age 15.
That is unbelievable. I mean, that's wonderful. What an inspiration. So you've continued your studies. You've picked up your studies and you've continued them. Because you don't go from 10th grade to PhD overnight. You've been doing this over a long period of time.
When I quit fighting in 2008, GIPS closed in 2007, and I loved the time that I worked there for the Heart Degrees. And I did actually end up with a really good job, even though I had lost a really good job. I ended up with a job that offered similar pay and benefits, but I never felt settled in or at home, as at home in my new role. Yeah. I was working in distribution and receiving and shipping and logistics, and it was fine and it paid the bills, but I didn't love it. And when I gave up fighting, I had always talked about going back to college, going back to school, going to college. Never quite had the confidence to take that first step and wasn't sure I'd be able to hang. And when I got to the end of my fighting career, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to go take a few classes at Athens Tech. So I went and I took the placement test, and they said, oh yeah, you go right into some college classes. So I took a year's worth of classes at Athens Tech, and I knew I wanted to do something with nutrition, and I was trying to figure out what exactly that was. And I figured out that to be a legitimate nutritionist, you really need to become a registered dietitian. Okay. So I enrolled at UGA, got accepted as a sophomore, and got into their dietetics program. Graduated from that in 2015.
Let's stop there. She, like I said earlier, she graduated. There was 15 of 5,000 graduates that were graduating with a 4.0 honor graduates, and she was one of them.
Wow. 15 of 5,000. So out of 5,000 graduates in the program, only 15 were honor graduates?
15 were 4.0.
15 were 4.0.
Yeah, I had 4.0
That says something about the difficulty of that degree, I think. And you were one of those 15.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
And so to become a dietitian, after you finish your undergraduate degree, the next thing you have to do is an internship.
Okay.
And UGA has an outstanding internship program, and I thought, well, I'm going to apply to get into this. So they take 6 students a year in their program. And I applied and I got accepted, and it's a combined internship and master's degree program. And after I finished my first semester, I talked to my research advisor, and I said, I really think I want to work on this project a little longer. Can you support me long enough to do a PhD? And she said, absolutely. So I changed my degree objective. That was in the fall, early spring of 2016. And so now I think I'm 2 years away from finishing the PhD.
That is wonderful.
I hope only 2 years.
Yeah, because that's a lot. And so what will you do with your doctorate in nutrition?
Yeah, doctorate, yeah. I think that I would like to teach at the university level and stay in research. And I'm not, it's a little bit of a struggle to figure out how that fits in. I've done a pretty good job balancing that and still being able to maintain teaching fitness classes and maintain some role in contemporary martial arts. With some ups and downs. Chuck has had to shoulder some things that he didn't during the first 20 years we were open. But I think when I'm not in school, I will be able to have a little bit more time for some of those administrative
My goal
things.
is for her to help when she gets her degree, her PhD, is to have a program at Contemporary Martial Arts to not only help our athletes and our children, but also the parents, and have some kind of program where they can learn about food and dietetics and nutrition. I
totally see that fitting in with exactly what you all have been doing.
It really does fit in so well with what we do.
It sure does, and a lot of people don't know because it's become so easy for us to grab our food and go that we don't think about it. We just think about it in terms of convenience or cost, but we don't really think about what we're consuming.
We don't, and it's also super easy to find information about nutrition, and some of it's good and some of it's okay and some of it's horrible. And there's not a lot of good ways for the average consumer to know what's good advice and what's bad advice. So it's really important to have someone with the training to be able to kind of help you sort it all out and figure out what you need to do.
That makes perfect sense to me. Well, to be such a power couple and so smart and engaged and everything, this has been a fun, easy hour with you all. It's been fun, and I'm so glad that you came in today and that we got a chance
thank you for asking.
Hear a little bit about both of you. And so I'll just leave it there. This was fantastic. Thanks, Wes Bailey. Appreciate your skillful directing, and thanks, Randy Daniel, and thank you, Chuck and Carolina Coffin. It's been wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Tina.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.